Hey everyone, I actually participated in my first game jam this past week. It was the GMTK 2026 jam, and it was a great experience, and I wanted to share a couple of things that I learned from it. First, game jams are great for meeting and networking with other people. They had an external team finder tool where you could say, oh, I'm an artist looking for a coder, or I'm a 3D modeler looking for somebody who's good at Unreal Engine. You could say that you're looking for something particular and what skills you would be able to offer a team. Once I put in my information in there, I was able to very quickly find a team of 4 people, although one of them has to step away for personal reasons. But I always had this stereotype of indie devs as overworked interdisciplinarians, but that's usually not the case. It's only crazy people like me who do that. Once we had a team, we then worked on to a plan of action for once the game started. They announced the theme. It was Countdown. We only really needed to brainstorm for about an hour or two. Once the theme was announced, we spent a very short time brainstorming and were able to start execution very shortly after that. We settled on the player as an overworked mailroom clerk, sorting boxes, trying to hit quota before the end of his shift. Our game, Piles and Piles of Boxes, was planned out where you had a time limit, you had a quota to hit, and you had boxes that would enter from one side and had to be sorted into 4 different destination cubes. The second thing I learned is that jams are a great way to learn, the little specifics of how to work with a team. We were all in different time zones, and I found it's an essential skill to have basic literacy in some kind of source control tool like Git. My models, my textures, my animations all needed revision several times. And the sound guy also had several draft compositions that ended up being reworked a couple of times. Together with the fact that there was an early idea that the player character would be a ragdoll, and we eventually had to toss that idea because it just wasn't working properly. It wasn't cooperating with the model. Maybe how I set up the model was incorrect for it. But that was an idea that's rather than solving this, we're just going to cut that feature out and we're going to stick with canned animations. The third thing I learned, and I think this was the biggest thing I needed to hear, was to call something finished. Not procrastinate by trying to be a perfectionist. I think perfectionism is a killer for calling anything done, and it's way too easy for you to say, oh, I'm just being a perfectionist, and treat that as sort of a complimentary way to say that you're not finishing something. We had a deadline that we had to hit, and that deadline helped us sort our priorities properly. There was one idea we had very early on for joke upgrades that did nothing, like certification in some nonsensical strategy, and they would just be spawn items that in your area that would get in your way as you tried to move boxes around. But obviously, if you play the game, they didn't make it into the actual game. It was just excluded because it was ancillary to the core project. We had a deadline and we had to keep that schedule. If you've heard of the 80-20 rule, about 80% of what makes a project done is about 20% of the features that could potentially go into it. There are major things like the control scheme, etc., major aesthetic decisions. That's what makes a game feel finished, and the stuff that's outside of that could very easily be expanded. Obviously this game could be expanded on hugely, but it's done in its current state. It's something very, very small, and it's something that's very, very concentrated on what matters to making the game feel good. I think we did all right, especially with most of our levels being essentially thrown together last minute. Fourth and final thing I wanted to say, jams are great for being inspired. I had a lot of fun on the weekend checking out a bunch of other games people made for the jam. I rated about 70 of them over the course of the weekend and into Monday. There were over 10,000 entries, so I barely made a dent. It's really cool to see some people are actually close to pro and were able to make something that really almost feels finished. Unfortunately, some people weren't able to finish, or they ran into some sort of exporting issue where I try to play their game in the browser and it wouldn't run. But those are the sort of things that you run into. Software is complicated. So I want to conclude with some of my faves that I played over the course of this event. 9 Circles, 1 Deck is this really, really cool looking game where you have to throw spells in one direction, another, or cast them on yourself by pressing up in order to push enemies away from you, because they'll do damage if they get close enough. It's like a really, really quick miniature deck builder. I actually do really like the art style as well. Feed the Wolf is a simple sort of puzzle game where you have to build chains of pigs so that the wolf eats all of them on screen, and you basically just drag and drop tiles, and each pig has a jump point where the wolf will jump from one pig to the next pig, and your goal is to basically make one big chain that hits all of them. The art style, again, is absolutely gorgeous. I'm not very good at puzzle games, but I had a lot of fun with this one. Cryptic is one of a couple of dungeon crawlers where the way it works is you queue up attacks that have a damage value, a delay turn before they go off, and a cooldown before you're allowed to use them again, as well as all of your resources coming in the form of ticks. So what you have to basically do is you have to queue up your attacks so that they hit in a particular order in order to prevent the enemy from hitting you as many times as they want, because your MP and your health are basically the same resource. Another dungeon crawler, The Last Wick, is really, really cool because it is... again, your timer is your light source, and it's also the way that you attack enemies. Every single time you have to make a move, you have to select which direction you're going to move, and it tells you how much light you're going to use. And again, like, I love dungeon crawlers. I love this crispy pixel aesthetic. The music is great, the art is great, and the whole thing is built around the candle as your primary resource. It's absolutely incredible. I think this one is my pick for the overall jam. This is called Shush the Dragons Asleep. You have to very carefully sneak in, loot some stuff, and flee with your loot in a minigame where your walk speed, like it's one of those ones where it's such a cool little premise. Your little guy has to sneak in, steal some treasure, and then get out before the dragon grabs you. There's a couple of potions you can use that will increase the amount that you can carry. There's potions you can use to increase your movement speed, and the gold that you collect by selling items to the guy back at headquarters is the gold that you also used to upgrade your character. Very cool. I want this to be a finished game. I really, really like this one. It's such a cool little one.